G'day guys, Titus week 2. Just a reminder, this is an optional study, so if you started your growth group in the last week of April, then this is week 2 for you. If you began your group in the first week in May and you started with study 1, which is what we wanted you to do, then this one is one that you skip and go straight to week 3. As out of this study, we're coming into week 2 of the Titus series. However, the preaching series, however, the study is a study that's alone, separate from anything else, because we won't be preaching on 1 Timothy and Titus combined. We'll actually be doing a Mother's Day service, which has a Mother's Day sermon. So this will be a sort of a one-off, which is really good. Looking at 1 Timothy and Titus, a significant overlap between the two. Titus and Timothy and 1 and 2 Timothy are known as the pastoral epistles. Each of the letters is written by Paul to individuals who are given the responsibility of establishing the young church where they find themselves, growing it into maturity and godly living amongst those who are in the church. There's a lot of overlap between the two, between 1 Timothy and Titus. This week we're going to be looking at some of the issues. There's 2 main ones I'm going to hit up, but there's actually 4 key ones that I've included in the study, and so there's 2 extra ones there if you have enough time. The main 2 are gospel truth and godly living. There's also false teachers. There's the opportunity to look at that, and church leadership. But we will be looking at those later on in the Titus series as well. So if you don't get a chance, you won't miss out. Okay, so first of all, gospel truth. There's a bunch of readings there from 1 Timothy and Titus, and the first question asks, what does Paul say is the truth, and how must the truth be upheld? So have a look at those verses, some from Timothy, some from Titus. And basically what we get when we listen to Paul's teaching is that the truth is the gospel message. The truth of what God has done in and through Jesus, and Paul gives a fairly detailed description there about what the truth is in each letter. He wants it to be clear what the church is on about, what their mandate is, and what they are to defend as God's people. So very, very clear. This is the truth. This is what Jesus has done. This is what God has done through Jesus, and this is the way He's working. Okay, the second question is, what would be the result if he left these bits out of the letters? This is a question if you're thinking through the application to why is it significant for the church that he includes this, and what would happen if he didn't. I guess the key thing there is otherwise it becomes moralizing, doesn't it, when it just becomes about setting up church structures and living out good lives because that's what God tells you to do. And if you don't have the basis of the gospel at the heart of everything that you do, then that's what's going to happen. And you see that. You see that in churches all over the place, in different people's lives as Christians, when they throw out the basis of what they believe and just go for the application of living a life which, it looks good. If you leave the gospel out, then it's hollow. And so that's hopefully a good question for your groups to be thinking through. Why would you include that, and what would happen if you didn't? The third question is, what should we expect to see in your life and in the life of our church if we're committed to the truth as Paul tells our churches and the churches there to be? What would be the impact in our church, do you think, and in our individual lives? So push in a bit there to be thinking to people, what exactly does it look like? How does this make a difference for your life? How does this make a difference for our church? So that's godly truth and gospel truth. And then we move to godly living, which is, we've got a whole bunch of verses there as well. I haven't included heaps of questions this time because it's a fair bit of reading. But 1 Timothy and Titus readings. And then ask similar questions to the first half. What does Paul say about godly living? So pretty clear there. Godly living is an outworking of being saved, as well as a life that we're to continue in as Christians. It's helpful for the Christian as they live in the light of the promises of God and it's helpful for the non-Christian. So it's helpful for us to be thinking through, this is, as we live out these promises of God, this is how we're to live. But it's also helpful for non-Christians. They see godly living. They can't slander the gospel. They can't slander the church because Christians are living upright lives. So he does two things there. He's teaching to encourage the Christian and also to see the gospel upheld in the community. Question 5, what would be the result if he left these parts out of the letters? If he left these bits out about godliness, then people might just continue to live ungodly lives, not knowing the positive eternal impact living a transformed life has on those who are already saved. But also, it would leave out the significant impact that our example has on those who don't know God and who oppose the truth. And so those who oppose the truth, say Christians are no different to any others, would be right if we didn't live godly lives. So godliness, in 1 Timothy 4:8 says, godliness holds promise for this life and the life to come. And Titus 2:10, in every way it makes the teaching of God our Saviour attractive and means it will not be maligned. And you see that in Titus 2, 5 and 8 and 1 Timothy 5:15. Then I ask the question again, application for you personally and as your group. But this one is, what ways is this call to godly living a rebuke and a challenge to you? So where do you think, this is actually helping me, I need to make some changes here? And where is it a challenge to be moving forward? How can you be stepping forward in how you live a godly life for the good of the gospel and for the good of yourself? Then we've got two other options there. If you'd like to, you could spend some time looking at those if you have enough time. So you might like to think through false teachers and church leadership, two key topics which are closely linked, obviously, because they're the opposite of each other. And so I've got a few verses there for false teachers, and you might just ask a similar thing. What does Paul say about false teachers? What's the result if he left out this stuff about false teachers? And in what ways this call to rebuke false teachers and rid the church of false teachers a challenge to you and your church and our church? So be thinking through what's the impact of false teachers on our church and how can we combat that? And then church leadership. Having a look at the positives, what God wants for the leaders of his church, and seeing that those two in 1 Timothy and Titus as well. And then the last question, question 7, is basically a similar application to the others, but it's giving people the chance to actually put that into practice. So ask the question, what actions do you need to take to move forward in your love of the truth and living in godliness, which are the two main topics that we hit up. So give people the chance to think through, what is it I'm going to do this week, and not have just a answer on a piece of paper. And then pray together, giving thanks for the gospel, the good news, which has saved us. And pray that the Spirit will be shaping us and changing us, that we can live for him more and more, and that the truth will be protected, that many people will be brought into God's kingdom. So we will protect the truth in the way we live, the way we teach, and hold on to the truth as well. Alright guys, well, I hope you enjoy this week 2 study for those of you who are doing it, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week when we get into study 3. It should be a great time. One thing for those passages, the Bible readings, just a small tip, not a biggie at all, but it's sometimes helpful if you have them written down on small pieces of paper. When it comes to time to reading different passages, and when you've got lots of passages like that, you hand out a piece of paper to those who want to read, and when it comes their turn, you can just say 1 Timothy and point to the person. They've already got the passage worked out, they've already looked it up. Might be helpful. Just a small thing. Alright guys, see you next week. Bye.